We've come now to the history books. We're looking at how the 12 tribes are now formed into a nation of Israel, having wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, have said yes to the renewal of the covenant God has given initially at Sinai and then again on the plains of Moab, and how they now settle in Canaan, in their promised land, some 400 years after God gave that initial promise to Abraham. The motivation behind the writers is simply addressing one key pertinent issue. Will the people of God keep covenant faithfulness or not? We see in the book of Joshua that the people of Israel are successful in keeping covenant faithfulness and taking the land that God has promised them. Starting in the region behind us in Jericho, Joshua leads the 12 tribes to conquer the whole nation of Israel, each settling in their assigned territory. By the end of Joshua's life, he could say, "You choose who you would serve to the nation and the tribes of Israel. But as for me and my household, we will serve Yahweh." Under Joshua, the people remain faithful to the covenant and are established in the land of Canaan. However, we see a pattern emerge in Judges which is never resolved in the Hebrew Bible and in fact really reflects the old human condition, the cycle of the human condition. We start humanity worshipping God. We receive the blessings of protection, provision and identity. We become complacent in Israel's case, looking to the gods of the nations around them to provide protection, provision and identity. Humanity is governed by whatever they worship, and in this case these gods are oppressive, so Israel becomes oppressed by the gods and the nations around them. They cry out to God for a deliverer or a judge, as is in our English translation. He sends one to particular tribal regions. Under the leadership of that deliverer or judge, they are successful again, they are blessed again, they come back into God's good governance, receive that protection, provision and identity, and live in peace for the duration of that leader's lifetime. But tragically again, start to look to worship the gods of the nations around them, become complacent in the blessings of Yahweh Elohim, and become oppressed again by the gods of the nations around them. And this cycle of the human condition continues all the way through not only Judges but also the history of Israel and Judah under the leadership of kings. However, it's not all doom and gloom in this period of history. You have two different women who in a sense are prophetic types of a new humanity to come. Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute living in Jericho, the first stronghold that Joshua takes when they take the promised land. And Ruth, who lives in Moab but recognises something of the God of Israel, of Yahweh, and both of them reject the gods of their childhood and seek to come under the good governance of God, and they flourish under his protection, provision and identity. What's fascinating when we put Joshua and Judges next to each other is we see God's civilizing of humanity. If we go right back to the time of Noah, we see there is a concession and a command after the flood. In Eden, God had given humanity green plants and fruit to eat. However, after the flood, God makes a concession with humanity and says, you may eat meat, you may kill animals and eat them. Possibly because they'd started to do that before the flood. But he brings a command at this point and he says, however, you are never to take another person's life, because humanity is made in the image of God. Humanity's life is sacred. If you take someone else's life, then someone must pay a price for that life, life for life. And this is a command over the whole of humanity after the flood. Everyone who kills someone else, life must be demanded from them. Fast forward to God delivering the law through Moses, we see an even more precise recovery of justice. In the context of revenge culture, which we've touched upon in Lamech, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for life, was seeking to put an end to the escalation of violence. In ancient cultures, if someone gouges someone's eye out, they might avenge that act through killing the original perpetrator. The person who's then killed, their family, might take revenge and seek to kill the other person's family. That other person's tribe, the family's tribe, would then seek retaliation, and all-out tribal warfare would ensue, simply triggered from one wrong, unethical act of violence. When God brings his Torah, his law through Moses at Sinai, he's seeking to put a boundary to this escalation of violence. If someone gouges someone's eye out, their eye is gouged out. If someone takes someone's life, then they are subject to the death penalty. Rape is an example where the perpetrator, the male perpetrator, is subject to the death penalty and the female victim is deemed innocent. We see at the end of Judges, but also in the time of Kings, the death penalty is not enacted, and there's such extraordinary escalation of violence, particularly at the end of Judges, that an all-out civil war ensues, almost taking out one of the tribes of the perpetrators, Benjamin. However, through Joshua, God enacts justice for the 400 years of violence of the kings of Canaan, the kings of the Amorites, who have wiped out entire communities. For 40 years they have heard of the God of Yahweh, who has delivered the people of Israel from oppression in Egypt. But despite repeated warnings, despite an inordinate amount of time given to repent, the blood of those victims cries out from the ground, and through Joshua, God enacts justice in the land of Canaan. However, we can see through these history books a foretaste of one who is to come, Jesus, who will take the death penalty on behalf of the whole of humanity, who will be the new Yeshua, the new Joshua, who will tear down the strongholds, the fictions, the unbelief, the resistance to the goodness and kindness of God that have been constructed in the human heart, and instead reconstruct a humanity which is totally able to trust in the goodness and kindness of God and live full and complete lives under his good governance again, trusting his ways again. A Jesus who will be the ultimate deliverer, under whose leadership there will be peace and prosperity forever. And a Jesus like Boaz, who paid the price to marry Ruth, who will pay the price for a new, restored humanity.